Hello there. It's me, Dahlia. I want to do this video that depicts something that I want to talk about related to just some different discussions I'm going to be posting on my channel. And this is the first one. But this one was inspired by when I was at work the other day. I had time to be able to watch, I believe it was called The 13th, and that came out in 2016. And it was very enlightening on a lot of stuff that I didn't really grow up seeing too much of, in my school system. And I think, I was thinking a little bit further of just how, the sadness of institutional racism and just, where it really, I think, stems from. And I was really thinking more about how, a lot of times racism is the root of sexual insecurity, and sexual insecurity is the root of racism. I personally think that, I was thinking a little bit more about how so much culture that gets usually disrespected by a lot of, sexually insecure people, who just don't understand that, culture is also supposed to indicate somebody's sexual identity. Now, keep in mind that 13th doesn't talk about, if you've never seen it, the 13th doesn't really talk about sex within culture and stuff like that, but that was just something I started thinking more about, how, you have activists of many different backgrounds that try to enlighten people on, their prejudices and really their lack of understanding of people of different ethnicities. And I just wanted to think a little bit more about how music plays a role in that too, on being able to broaden people's understanding of what culture is supposed to mean, and that music is usually the I guess you could say it's the if culture is the house, then music is you could say, the framework of the house. It's the thing that really keeps and binds the entire house together, right? You need the actual skeleton of the house to actually make a house. Music is the skeleton. Without music, the culture can't exist. So, with that in mind, I was thinking about how there's so many cultures out there that usually are able to be structured by a certain kind of genre of music. And this genre of music, even if it's not obviously talking about sex or sexual acts, sexual identity, it doesn't need to still essentially imply the kind of sex that a culture is going to essentially promote. For a long time, white supremacy developed this idea that the only kind of sex that was pure was between a white man, a white woman, and through the eye of God's approval. That any other kind of sex was considered impure, and anybody that thought otherwise was beneath a white person. And that kind of is a lot of times, when you think about how they relied so heavily on developing this house without really any skeleton to go with it, it just, it was just really bad, and especially in America, that was the biggest issue. It's just white supremacists, but without an actual skeleton to really explain what they were doing. And so I think more about how, thankfully nowadays, there's more cultures that try to have these fully fleshed ideas of life and living, and how, um, sexual insecurity can be stopped when people know exactly that the culture defines the sexual kind of person you are, not the skin color. Because I think for a lot of white people that were white supremacists, they were insecure about, say, an African American male being able to be more aggressive sexually than a white man. And that white men were very envious of that and would use that to justify their racism, um, which obviously wasn't the right way to go about it. But I think for the most part, a big movement we as musical artists and just people in general can continue to do is try to consolidate the sexual identity to fit more of a culture that people can say is like, yeah, like if you're a part of this culture, expect these kind of, these sexual identities to exist within this kind of culture, but don't base somebody's sexual identity primarily just on the color of their skin. Base it on the culture they're a part of, which is what a lot of artists like myself have been really working hard to try to help consolidate and again prove that with every culture needs to be a skeleton that defines what's acceptable within that house per se. So I guess, yeah, let me begin. So really quick, I just want to try to run down from memory all the kinds of, from my life experiences and just from other people's life experiences that I've learned from, to how people would define certain kinds of music fitting certain sex culture. And just keep in mind when I bring up sex culture, like obviously a big question is, well, how would you teach kids about culture then if sex is always supposed to kind of still be implied as part of that culture? Because music being the skeleton, well aware of the sex involved, how do you talk about sex to a kid who obviously isn't supposed to be having sex or really know anything about it? And I would say, well, you have to be honest. Be honest and tell kids that, well, yes, people who live certain cultures also live, you know, harmonize with people differently than people in other cultures when it comes to, physical intimacy, that people harmonize differently, and stuff. And that's why they like the cultures they do. So they feel that they have a way to actually physically harmonize with people, intimately harmonize with people in a way that the culture still defends, because the music essentially, consolidating and structuring the culture still structures the sex or the physical acts, the harmonious physical or intimate acts. But yeah, that's how I would say is that sex ed would improve in schools if they explain more how sex and culture are very intertwined and how to be more sophisticated about that, so kids don't grow up thinking they're part of a culture, for other reasons, and not getting why they're not part of that culture. That culture doesn't really gel with them because they're not fitting the sexual component all that well. And so, I would say, for instance, industrial rock versus industrial metal, or rock versus metal. Really, what's the difference? So, obviously, we could talk about all the music theory all day long, but when we get down to the nitty gritty about the sex component being promoted through these kinds of genres, metal kind of, I find, is usually promoted as more of a BDSM kind of stuff, whereas rock is still more of you just your French kissing and some rough housing during sex, but not as doesn't have to be extreme, as it's not as extreme as BDSM, you know. It's still more about the French kissing. Maybe I found from my experience, um, it seems like slapping is also considered part of the rock culture as well. So, again, you know, those are some ways to think about the differences. But yeah, I want to keep going on this. I think I will end this here. This is gonna be a nice cliffhanger, so you know, I'll continue onward with some other genres and kind of what I think they've helped structured in terms of sex within culture. And again, just being capable of knowing this will help people young and old know how to ensure that they're part of a culture that really works for them. But anyway, thanks for watching. See you soon.